Hello everyone, welcome to part 3 of a beginner's guide to IMO. In this video we're going to be showing you how to make IMO, you guessed it, 3. If you haven't seen our previous few videos on why we need indigenous microorganisms or IMO, how to make IMO 1 and 2, you'll find links in the description box to those. Otherwise, on to IMO 3. Now this one, surprisingly, was probably the hardest part of the journey of IMO cultivation. It took me 4 attempts to really get this, and I almost kind of felt like giving up several times. Now we've included parts of the first 3 attempts to make IMO 3 so that you can see my processing and thinking about how to get it to work, how to keep it from drying out, overheating, all that. So I hope that can be helpful to you. If you'd like to skip to the last attempt, though, we'll have that time stamped for you. And if you are a multimedia type learner like me, you might really benefit from having some of this stuff in writing. And that's why we wanted to give you our ebook on IMO cultivation, steps 1 through 5. They've got recipe cheat sheets in there, explanations, all that. So if that would be helpful, please hit the link in the description to get access to that. Otherwise, here's how to make IMO 3. All right guys, our IMO 2 is ready. We let it sit for, I think, 10, 11 days, and it is fully ready to use so far as I know. Now, I'm gonna show you how to make IMO 3. This is my first time ever making it. I'm gonna show you just from what I've learned, what I've observed from a lot of different people. I'm gonna give you the basic version of this, as well as just the additions that you can add. As far as I'm aware, you don't have to add much past these 4 initial ingredients. So those 4 ingredients are, number 1, you obviously need your IMO 2, your indigenous microorganisms 2, which is just IMO 1 preserved in brown sugar. Second thing you need is some sort of carbohydrate source. I'm using wheat bran. I just picked this up from my local feed store. The third ingredient you need is a high carbon source. I've got a couple that I'm going to be using. I've got wood chips right here. These are really nicely decomposed wood chips. I've got some dried leaves. I'm throwing in some biochar, some activated charcoal. Why not? Kill a couple birds with one stone. Beyond that, we can just add water to hydrate the pile and get it to the right consistency. IMO 3, one way of looking at it is that you're making a miniature hot compost pile. So it doesn't really get very high. It's just gonna be a couple feet wide and maybe not even a foot high, maybe a foot high. It's still gonna heat up dramatically because of the indigenous microorganisms. Those 4 ingredients will get you there. What I'm also gonna be adding, and this is just because I have these on hand. So if you don't have these on hand, don't go out and buy them. I didn't go out to buy anything extra. I just, again, had these things on hand. I'm gonna be using some raw apple cider vinegar. Thank you, Costco, for that. Molasses, plant fertilizer that I made from weeds last year. Humic acid that I just collected from my worm bin. This is just worm leachate. Worm leachate is very high in humic acid. Sea salt, and then I've got my water that I've been letting sit out to dechlorinate for 24 hours. Those are gonna be my ingredients for this pile. I'm gonna mix up all of my ingredients, except for the carbohydrate and the carbon source, into my bucket of water. So I'll take my bucket, and this is a 5-gallon bucket. First one I'll add is my sea salt. Typically, the original way of making this is by using sea water. I'm nowhere near the sea right now, so I'm going to be using sea salt. You use 20 ounces of seawater, which translates to roughly 20 grams or a tablespoon of sea salt. So I'm just going to add that in. I'm going to add in my humic acid next, my worm leachate. This I'm adding in approximately 5 tablespoons. This might be a little bit more, but my worm leachate is probably not super dense, so I'm just going to add that right in. I'm going to add in about an 1/8 cup of molasses. I'm just kind of eyeballing this, a couple tablespoons. I'm going to add in a splash of my liquid fertilizer, my natural liquid fertilizer. This stuff smells so rank. Very little bit. Okay, for my vinegar, I'm going to add the same amount as my molasses. I'm just going to add about an 1/8 cup. Again, obviously approximating, just doing this by feel. And then finally, the last bit will be my IMO 2. So I'm going to take this, and I just need to add about 6 ounces. 3/4 cup. This is just brown rice. Add a few of those. And the IMO 2, I'll just say now, it still smells pretty garlicky. From what I've heard is what it's supposed to smell like. Don't know why. So I'm just gonna mix this up nice and thoroughly. This is kind of like baking. I mean, you just want to combine your wet ingredients first. so that they all go in evenly. Okay, I'm gonna build my pile right around here. This is gonna act as the food source. These microbes. This is a 35-pound bag. This is probably gonna make more IMO3 than I need for our tiny little garden. So I'm gonna go just kind of spread this out so that I can spread my wood chips and incorporate some dried leaves on top. From what I've heard, you want equal parts carbon and carbohydrate. There's some wood chips. We'll add in some dried leaves. They're gonna be another carbon source. We'll stop there, sprinkle in my biochar, and now I'm just gonna mix this up. So I feel pretty good about that pile. I think that's relatively mixed. All right, and now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a well in the center. This is kind of like if you've ever seen people make pasta, or if you've made pasta yourself, you kind of get your flour on the counter and then you make a well in the middle, put your eggs in there. So I'm gonna add my inoculant, and I'm just gonna add a little bit and try and incorporate that. And I'm just gonna do this by hand so that I kind of get a feel for it. I want all this to get soaked up before I add any more. We don't want to add too much water in because I'm out of wheat bran, but I guess you could just add in more carbon material. Try and get the outer edges of the pile in there. Just trying to get this so that every little bit is a little moist. Okay, make my well again. It's definitely getting damper. Okay, so I think I'm getting pretty close. Might need to add a little bit more in, and we'll incorporate the sides. It kind of feels like what you'd want your hot compost to feel like. Just starting to clump in the hand, hold together a little bit, not just wisping away. But you don't want it sopping wet or dripping, or else it'll go anaerobic. That just means some unhelpful bacteria could form. Yeah, I think I'll add just the rest of that. That might actually just do it. All right, guys, the first pile that I made did not turn out exactly how I thought it was supposed to. It's apparently not supposed to raise above 120 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're just gonna give it another try. We've got more IMO2. We've got more materials. I got another bag of wheat bran. Okay, I think we might actually be there with that amount of moisture. So we'll get our burlap and go ahead and cover it. And we're gonna monitor the temperature, and we'll just check this 12 hours from now. It's like 8 p.m. So we'll check it around 8 in the morning, see how the activity is, and we'll just see. We just wanna make sure that it doesn't go above 120. So I checked this pile about 13 hours, maybe 14 hours after making it yesterday, and it had already heated up to like 117 or something like that. I broke it up and kind of tried to get some of the heat out. I had to actually go to work. I broke it up, put it back together, came back 2.5 hours later to check on it, and it had skyrocketed up to about 135. This thing just heats up so fast. So I quickly disassembled it. I just, spread it out a bit and tried to get it to cool down, which it did. But then I brought it back together after a little bit, and it started heating up right away, really quickly. Spread it out again. Then I left it for a while, and now I just about an hour ago put it back together, actually maybe like 30 minutes ago, and it's up to 100. I'm having trouble keeping this pile cool enough. So, this is just what this is all about, though. It's trial and error and figuring it out. I'm just learning that with the materials that I'm using and the IMO2 that I'm using to inoculate it, it's heating up so quickly. I really need to probably be around for a lot of the time. Okay guys, we're making our third pile of IMO. This time I'm using slightly different ingredients. I'm just using some all-purpose flour and some oats. And these are totally legitimate ingredients that you can use. Flour, typically you don't want to use because it's just a little bit more expensive than wheat bran, but I'm going to try and make actually a small pile. A couple other things I'm going to try are trying to add in more carbon material to keep the pile from heating up too much, because my last couple piles have heated up like right away. And this is also going to be a really hot day. We're starting this in the morning. It's going to get up to 100 ambient temperatures. So I think this pile is going to heat up quickly, but we'll just keep an eye on it. Again, starting in the morning, I'm going to check it multiple times throughout the day to make sure it's not overheating, and then I'll see where it's at night, and we'll go from there. All right guys, it's been one day. It's actually been a little bit more than a day, and I'm really glad I checked it. The pile is at 120. Now I checked it an hour and a half ago, and it was at 115 or 116.
So it's climbing right now. It's in the safe zone, but as just a general protocol, you're highly recommended to turn your pile, which just means flipping it up. So I'm gonna do that right now, and I'm gonna take off the burlap and see what it looks like. Looks about the same. I'm gonna take out my temperature probe and just give it a good mix up. All right, everyone, 4th time is the charm. We are trying again. The last pile, don't even care about that one. It heated up past 120. This is the story of my life now. So, you know, we're just gonna try again. This time I'm using just oats. These are whole oats that I got from the feed store. I've already got my nutrients mixed. I'm gonna swirl them up in my 5-gallon bucket and get going. This time what I'm gonna try is, I'm gonna try getting the pile a little bit more saturated. It was really drying out before, and I'm gonna be adding in a lot more carbon. That's just my best guess. I'm gonna be trying to add in a lot of carbon. So I'm gonna lay out my oats. This is a 50-pound bag. I'm gonna lay out half of it. So around 25 pounds. I'm gonna mix up my nutrients. Filled up this bucket with water to let it dechlorinate for a couple days, and my kids decided to toss a bunch of grass and leaves in there, which is all right. So what I've been doing before is just kind of carbon by volume, like equal parts by volume, and I think that what I need to do is just try and get it closer to by weight. So leaves weigh hardly anything. I'm gonna add in some wood chips and some biochar, or activated charcoal rather, not quite biochar yet. Yeah, I'm feeling some more leaves. There's some sticks in here which should keep the pile lofty. I really want to give this a thorough mixing so that nothing wonky happens. There's my well. And get some more of these grass clippings out. Water is 80 degrees already. I'm gonna add in just a little bit more wood chip. I'm probably overthinking it, but just to add the rest of that. Let's try and go in with a little bit more water. Probably put in 2 gallons. Let's go for maybe, yeah, just a touch more. I think that's gonna be good. Took a little while to mix. All right, well, I'm gonna cover this and we will be back tomorrow morning. All right, well, here we are 1 week in this pile. I've been actually flipping it every single day and watering it quite a bit. So I'm surprised at how much moisture this thing can soak up. I think this is unique to our environment probably, but if you live in a dry climate, you might find that really relevant. I watered it really heavily last night, and I'll be interested to see what it looks like when I actually get into it, but there is definitely more of the white fuzz covering the outside. It's right about at 120, haven't flipped it at all today. It's a touch under, maybe 117 or 118. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull out the probe and give this pile a toss up. Well, so there definitely is more clumping. Guys, our IMO3 has finished. It's finished fermenting, it's cooled down. You can see that there is a good amount of white fungal activity all over the materials. There's also some blue bits and some gray bits, and there's not tons of it, which is totally okay. If your whole pile has covered blue fungus, that might be a bad sign. But because we've just got kind of flecks of blue and gray in with the white, we're totally good. You should maybe see some mycelium strands throughout there as well. That's basically what you're looking for. And now it's ready to be stored. And there's a couple ways you can store this. You can put it into breathable sacks or like a cedar box if you have a big one. But you basically just want to keep this in a cool, kind of dark environment. This is shelf stable in those conditions for a long time, probably up to a year. You can either put it into storage immediately, or you can immediately then use it to make IMO4, which is what I'm going to do. All right guys, that is how you make IMO3. This felt like quite a victory for some reason, probably because of all of the attempts. It was really nice to have it all actually work out. Guys, we're making this series because we believe more people would benefit from these practices, and maybe more importantly, I believe our planet could benefit from more people doing this. Indigenous microorganisms should be part of all of our gardens. So if you know someone who might benefit or be interested in making this, please share this video with them. Share the link to the ebook, A Beginner's Guide to IMO. You can find it in the description box. Please leave a comment if you have any questions, or if you want to share your experience with any part of the IMO process. We would love to hear those. Happy growing, y'all.